the final voter registration weekend before the 2024 general elections. And while this year's election could be historic, it will all come down to many registered voters heading to the polls. Newzroom Afrika's Nick Anderson takes a deep dive into the latest figures from the country's voters' roll.
The IEC announced this week that the South African voters' roll has crossed the 27 million mark for the first time. And with another voter registration weekend now underway, and online registration still open, that number will only grow before South Africans head to the polls. And since the last registration weekend in November last year, the IEC says the amount of online registrations has been sizable.
The online registration platform has proved to be the mainstay of the registrations in between the general registration weekends. We recorded just under 200,000 new registrations since the registration weekend in November. Overall, registration activity in that period is 498,000. Again, this is a new feat never realized before.
Diving deeper into that 27 million strong list of registered voters, it's clear that Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal boast the most registered voters. The Eastern Cape comes in third, just ahead of the Western Cape. In terms of South African voters living out of the country, over 29,000 have registered so far. But while we know how many people are registered going into this weekend, the nation still does not know when this year's elections will be held. The date is yet to be declared by President Cyril Ramaphosa, but it legally has to take place in the 90-day window between May and August. And according to IEC Commissioner Janet Love, the Commission has done its part and is ready to go.
We have engaged with the President. We have explained implications that would be present in relation to the earliest date and to later dates. But ultimately, we believe that we have given the President as much information and assurance as has been requested, and now the decision will rest with the President in consultation with the Premiers.
While the date may be pronounced during next week's State of the Nation address, the voters' roll already tells us that getting young people to register to vote is still a huge challenge for the IEC. Less than 500,000 people between the ages of 18 and 19 are on the roll, while the bracket of 30 to 39 is the largest group of those registered, with 6.7 million people. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Nick Anderson in Johannesburg.
Now, as political parties crisscross the country in search of undecided voters, some elderly Northwest citizens say they're keen to exercise their democratic right. Senior citizens in Mahikeng are also urging young people to register to vote. Newzroom Afrika's Refilo Seboko has that story.
James Moloi lived the better part of his life under apartheid and witnessed South Africa's transition to democracy and its socio-economic challenges. The 70-year-old says he's been registering to vote since 1994, adding that he will register to vote in this year's general elections, despite the ANC-led government not keeping its service delivery promises. He says his multiple applications for an RDP house have proven unsuccessful.
Last year I got this center.
On the other hand, a 68-year-old pensioner says he has a different experience as an RDP house beneficiary and also receives a social grant. They are both adamant not to miss the final opportunity to register to vote this weekend and are also urging youth to participate in the elections. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Nasiphi in Mahikeng in the Northwest.
Let's take you now to Newzroom Africa's reporter Nasiphi Same, who joins us live from Cape Town for more. Nasiphi, a very good morning to you. We know that voting stations will be opening their doors from this morning, of course, expecting those who need to register to vote to ensure that they get there on time. Talk to us about what's expected there.
Well, we are less, or rather just shy of an hour before voting stations open their doors to the public. And not too long ago, we saw IEC officials doing their last-minute touch-ups, putting that branding outside to ensure that those that live in the vicinity know that this particular school behind us is one of the places where they can actually register. And leading up to this particular voter registration day, a number of departments, including Home Affairs, indicating that there will be not only, or rather they will be extending their hours today to allow those eligible voters who do not have the necessary documentation to use this particular weekend wisely and access their temporary identifications. And basically the IEC in the Western Cape also indicating that over 1,500 voting stations will be open in the Western Cape at 8 o'clock throughout the province, and also indicating that over 3.2 million people have so far registered to vote, leading up to the much anticipated 2024 national and provincial elections.
So what's been the general attitude on the ground, as of course the expectation is that a lot more young people will ensure that they make their mark and add their voice to this year's elections?
Just last year, the IEC indicating that they will be ramping up their campaign in enticing the younger cohort or the youth cohort to have them register vote. But basically the sentiment that we have received on the ground just this past week alone is that a number of communities, the ones that feel that they are not receiving adequate service delivery, many of them highlighting that they might just waiver their right to vote and not participate in that democratic process. However, we will be, crisscrossing the metro today and speaking to those voters, those that are registering and those that have opted to waiver their vote as to the reasons behind this, and also visiting a community that last year had asked the IEC not to open their voter registration centers in their community in Marikana, highlighting that a lack of service delivery was the reason that prompted them to take such a drastic decision. So it will be quite interesting that come the second voter registration weekend, where exactly they stand, because we do understand that last year they'd indicated that they will continue engaging not only with local government, and the councillor, but hopefully also engage with the IEC as to how to move forward. But a number of communities that we have spoken to just this past week alone, highlighting that chances are that they might not be registering to vote, which will indeed be posing quite a significant challenge for IEC that is actually going out and enticing those eligible voters to make their decision, or rather for them to register to vote, and going as far as saying, or rather some political parties going as far as saying that it is quite important to register to vote, and in the period leading up to the elections you then can decide whether or not to engage or make use of that democratic process, which is to vote for the political party that you would like to lead.
Yeah, very well, Nasiphi Same. Let's leave it there for now, as we will, throughout the course of this morning, be keeping track of the various voting stations across the country as day one of the weekend registration drive gets underway. Now,